Flowers and fungus. Flowers and fungus. As I said in my last chapter review of Tokyo Ghoul, I was scared. I was scared because when you have a happy-go-lucky chapter, usually you should expect some very tragic stuff to happen in the near future of Tokyo Ghoul. That's Ishida's writing, and Ishida does not hold back his gun in this chapter. Some might not have realized some of the meaning behind this chapter, because personally, I had to do a little bit of research after I finished reading this chapter, because I was curious. Thing is, I have it linked right here. I'm actually going to read what I discovered, because I'm not going to write it down. Like, I'm not going to remember off memory. I want to do a quote-unquote. But before I get into this, I just want to do some proper steps until I get into that topic I want to discuss. So, if you're wondering why I started this off with flowers and fungus, it's kind of obvious. In this chapter, chapter 32 of Tokyo Ghoul, there's 2 points in this chapter that was really subtle, but was very important to the main theme of this chapter, and the main theme of what we're getting into with Tokyo Ghoul, like this upcoming arc. Because 2 things I want to point out. Before I get into the Kaneki with the fungus, let's talk about the flower. So, Shu has, like, a backstory, and I want to actually pull it up here before I can talk about it in a proper fashion, and, you know, do quote-unquote here, because I don't want to actually get this wrong for what I'm going to say about the chapter. So, Shu, he's distraught. Like, you see Kane walk into a room, and we see a bunch of skulls all over the place. It's littered all over the place. There's a bunch of skulls. And you see Shu very depressed. He's just sitting down, depressed. And he's hungry. Like, he wants to eat. He's really depressed. And that was, the final page of the chapter. Here, I'm going to actually do quote-unquote here. Okay, hot. It's like my body's in purgatory. I'll change the atmosphere soon. Master Shu. And then this is what Shu says. It's painful. I'm so hungry. Isn't there something to eat? Anything is fine. How pitiful. How pitiful. What this goes to show is a multitude of things. For one thing, Shu is broken. He's fucking broken, which was obvious. Multiple chapters ago, like a while ago, months back, we saw a glimpse at Shu very briefly, and we knew he was broken. And with this ending conclusion, you see how Shu is kind of shadowed out. You can't really make him out much, but you can make out, his shoulder. Or whatever. And personally, from the look of it, I don't even know how to, look at that. I don't even know how to look at that and really determine what that really is. It looks like a Kagane. It honestly looks like a Kagane on Shu. Is it a Kakuja? I have no fucking idea. Maybe Shu's been eating ghouls to try to substitute for the lack of Kaneki. That's a possibility. But the thing is, Shu is very distraught. But this leads into the main subject and point of this chapter review I want to bring up. In the chapter, there is a flower that's introduced right here, if you can make that out. There's a flower that's introduced. It's called, Duftwolf, or whatever. It's German. It's a German flower, and I don't know how to pronounce it, so forgive me for that. But the name in English is called Fragrant Cloud. And this flower, this rose, it is a nice, good rose that a lot of people know of. It's a standard rose normally most of us would see. It's a common rose. But when you come to find out the actual meaning of this rose, when I was reading this, I was like, okay, I know Ishida loves his flowers. Don't get me wrong when I say that. Ishida, when he uses flowers as symbolism. He used that a lot in the ending of Part 1 of Tokyo Ghoul, and majority of Tokyo Ghoul Part 1, he used flowers. And if I'm correct, I don't remember the exact meaning, but if I'm correct, the flowers that was used in the little Kaneki and Sasaki, the human and ghoul part, when we saw the inner dialogue going on at the end of Part 1, well, there's flowers all over the place. And those flowers, if I'm correct, symbolize death, if I remember. And Ishida loves doing stuff like that. He loves his symbolism. He straight up just loves using symbolism like crazy. And so, as soon as I saw this flower introduced with this German word, I'm like, okay, I'm looking this shit up. I'm looking it up soon as I'm done with this chapter, because I know for a fact, knowing Ishida, it's probably something important. And little did I know, it was very fucking important. Like, holy shit, it's very important. And a majority of readers of this chapter will miss this valuable information. Now, doing a quote-unquote for what Shu says to Kanye as a younger person, he says this: "Please stop crying alone. Live beautifully, with your head up high, just like that rose on your chest." And at the end, on the final page of the chapter, you see Kanye have a tear come out his eye. He's crying because Shu. But let's go to the meaning now of this flower to show you why this is so vital, and what that scene really means as a whole, to the point of whatever arc we're about to get into. I'm assuming we're going to be getting into a Shu arc. So, here is what a brief description of this flower is. The color, it's a red flower, by the way. Ishida loves red flowers. The color is especially clear, and they don't fade like so many others do. And they are also very quick to rebloom. The bush never seems to be without flowers, and that is another big plus for this rose. Pretty much, if you don't understand that mumbo-jumbo I just said, this was like the meaning of the flower. Like, the color of the flower, red, doesn't really vanish and disappear. That is symbolizing that Shu doesn't really vanish. He's not really gone. And he doesn't easily go into depression like normal. Like, it takes a lot for him to get into depression. And that symbolizes how dire the situation is. But also, if you read the next part of it, and they are also very quick to rebloom. That means, since the flower has so much meaning between Kanye and Shu, that Shu is going to be quick to rebloom very soon. That is what that means right there with the flower. But there's even deeper meaning. There's actually deeper meaning to this flower. The flower supposedly is a connection between Asia and Europe. That's kind of what it is. And if I'm correct, I talked to one of my fellow German friends. He told me that Germany is kind of like in a union with Europe. And since they're kind of, like a union, they could slightly be considered like in Europe territory. You get the point I'm getting at. Like, the union. Like, I forget the actual name. It's like I forget the fucking full name. I'm having a damn brain fart right now. But what I'm getting at is Germany, since, France and Germany, all that, they're all linked and stuff, kind of, they're in the same area, it's kind of like a union state. And so, it's kind of symbolizing also the link between Shu and Kanye when they first met. What the flower also symbolizes, because that's what the flower means, too. And pulling up to the next point I want to talk about, besides that, too, it also gets on to the factor that, since this is telling us that the flower's quick to rebloom, that means Shu is going to rebloom very soon, depending on what happens. Now, judging by the way this was done, it's obvious we're getting into a Shu arc, because if anyone hasn't realized, when it comes to Tokyo Ghoul Re, Ishida loves using segments that are very similar to how Part 1 was done. For instance, like how the series began in Part 1, like with Nishiki being like the first person to pop up that was kind of like the villain. Nishiki was the first person to pop up as a villain in Tokyo Ghoul Re, if you think about it. So, Ishida uses a lot of parallels to Part 1 of his manga, and judging by the consistency of the way it's going, it's obvious that we're probably going to get into some form of Shu arc next, judging by how it was done. And so, that is my theory on that with the flower. And so, some of you might think I'm just talking out my ass, but I did some research, and that's what it says. Look for yourself, Fragrant Cloud. It's there. The correlations are there between Shu and Kanye in this flower. And it makes a lot of sense when you look at Ishida's track record of writing his series. So, moving on to the next point I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about that fungus. That fungus, I've heard about this fungus, and I think majority of us have probably heard about this fungus at very least once. I saw this a long time ago, a very long time ago on the Discovery Channel. It's been a long-ass time ago. I saw this fungus that could get inside of an ant, and it brain controls and brainwashes an ant and turns it into like a host, like a a zombie. That's what it turns his ant into. And at the end of the life cycle of the fungus, it makes it to where the ant crawls on top of a leaf or a tree or whatever and gets into the sunlight, and then the fungus grows out of its head. And it controls its ant host to get into a right spot for it can grow and spread its spores once again. And this is the life cycle of this fungus of an ant. But the fungus that Ishida mentioned in this chapter was some form of fungus that got into moths. And so I'm like, okay, so I've heard about ant fungus, like, you know, the fungus that gets into ants and brain controls them and stuff like that and turns them into fucking zombies. At first I'm like, there's a lot of correlations with that fungus with the chapter, and I still think Ishida was probably going that direction with the chapter, and you could still consider that with the way this is going with this fungus I actually discovered upon research of what I did after this chapter. So what I did was I went on to Google and I typed in fungus that controls moths. I typed that in on Google, and I think the third result down, I got this big-ass fucking article that talks about how these gypsy these gypsy moths are controlled by this fungus. And the point of this fungus was to kind of eradicate the population of the moths. And now, I know this is a Tokyo Ghoul review, okay? I know this is like, what the fuck, Chibi? Like, what the fuck? You're talking about moths, fungus, and flowers and shit in a Tokyo Ghoul. I know. I please fucking forgive me. Please. I gotta get into this because I'm just shocked with the way the symbolism is used. So, these gypsy moths, they were spreading all through United States, Europe, and Asia. Now, let's point this out, okay? The flowers connection, it was a flower that's originating from Asia and Europe type countries. And it was kind of a connection between them. And then the connection between Shu and Kanye. The moth originates from Europe and Asian temperatures, or climates, like where they are. That's where they originated from, where gypsy moths originated from. Asia and Europe. Correlation to the flower. And so I continued reading. I'm like, oh my god, okay, I cannot believe I'm doing this all for Tokyo Ghoul. I kept reading down, and I come to find out that this moth was spreading all over like wildfire. And so scientists got together to figure out how to control this population. These gypsy moths destroyed crops and crops and food and all sorts of shit. And so they were trying to figure out a way to control it. So they introduced this fungus that eradicated them, controlled them, and killed them off. And it turned them into a fucking vegetable. And that is what Kaneki, or Heise, talks about in this chapter. How this fungus comes out of a moth and turns them into like a fucking vegetable. And it's like two living organisms living inside of one. That's what it meant. That is the moth that it was actually talking about. And now you're probably wondering, okay, what does this moth have to fucking do with Kaneki? There is a lot of meaning to this, however. At first glance, when I was reading this chapter, let's get to the Tokyo Ghoul chapter panels now, for I can actually read those properly. Let's see, I think it was page 13, I think it was on. Okay, good. Here it is. Kaneki's... Oh, actually, no, I'll do this in a second. I'll read this quote in a second. Let's get to the next page. Okay, this next page, you see Kaneki in the bathroom. He's leaning up against the mirror, and he's having a conversation with Kaneki. Once again, very apparent, split personalities. I don't think I need to go into that. I've clarified that quite a bit in these past couple of reviews, so I'm just going to skip over the brief explanation to, you know, Kaneki. Now, the thing is, okay, Sasuke's sitting here, he's having a fucking headache. Like, he's holding his head and all that. He's putting his hand on the mirror in the bathroom. It looks like he's kind of nauseated, where he's sick. And all of a sudden, you see it to where Kaneki starts talking. Actually, let's do quote for quote in this panel. Or this page, actually. I am Kaneki. Me. You are Heise. You. We just share the same body. Have you heard of the caterpillar fungus? Caterpillar fungus. It's a parasitic fungus that targets insects. The caterpillar fungus germinates moths. And when spring is about to end... What time of the year is it? What time of year is it right now, Chibits? It's spring. And technically it's summer, actually, if you think about it. But where this takes place is spring. Spring season of anime? Think about that for a second. Okay, let's get back on topic. The caterpillar fungus germinates moths. And when spring is about to end, they turn into vegetation. separate lives are struggling in the same body. This represents Kaneki and Heise in the same body. And that's a bit like us. You can't continue to live while you have me inside. The more you know, the more your identity will fade away. Think about this for a second with the flower correlation. The flower, the colors barely fade. The red barely fades at all. You can't continue to live while you have me inside. The more you know, the more your identity will fade away. Even if you held on, you would end up where I am. We can't coexist. I doubt your sanity in wanting to save. You've finally looked at me. That's what Kaneki's saying to Sasuke. So please, next time, make sure. Here is the important dialogue that's going to confuse the fuck out of a lot of readers of this chapter. And at first, I had to take a moment to really grasp it, and I'm like, oh, okay. The next page, right after that, to disappear, that you don't erase me. Now, let's back up, let's read the line again, and then I'll read that right after it just to prove, like, what this really means in the long term. You finally looked at me. This is what Kaneki's saying to Sasuke. You finally looked at me, so please, next time, make sure to disappear. And then right after that, that you don't erase me. So what this means is a couple of things, actually. It means a lot of things. For one thing, to disappear, Kaneki was scared, or Sasuke was scared of disappearing. He didn't want to disappear. And so Sasuke is being told to disappear. And then Sasuke's telling Kaneki that you don't erase me. For instance, the point is that they're both having a struggle right here. They're both fighting over the body. That's exactly what this means right here. So, Kaneki wants Sasuke to disappear. And Sasuke wants to not be erased. That's pretty much what that means. That's exactly what that means. They were both having a conversation inside of their mind. In this dialogue, it's very fucking confusing if you don't really grasp that. It's getting very hard to really process at some points, because if you're not realizing that these are two different damn personalities talking with each other, you're going to be fucking confused. And right here, perfect example, Sasuke, Kaneki talking with each other. They're straight up talking with each other, and they're both fighting over the body. So let's back up. Let's back up to the page to where I was talking about the fungus, and then I'll go a little bit more in depth with that. So now you're thinking, okay, so what does that fungus have to do with Kaneki-Sasuke's situation? Well, obviously, there was two living organisms inside of one body, and one busted out. One busted out and turned into vegetation. Now, I'm not saying that Kaneki or Sasuke is going to turn into a vegetable. I'm not saying they're going to turn into vegetation. What that can emphasize is that either A, is that, for one, Kaneki is going to bust out of Sasuke, not in a sense of like a different body, but he's going to control the body, and he's going to completely destroy Sasuke. Just get the fucking way, get him gone, like just destroy him. Or, another one, the meaning behind the fungus, it's spread thanks to human help to kill off moths. This fungus was spread by humans. Now, why would this have correlation with Kaneki and Sasuke? CCG. That's the big thing we're probably forgetting about. In chapter 31, I think it was 31, we see where Sasuke lies to Arima about Hinami. He lies. And you saw it. You fucking saw it. Like, anyone could really notice that. Arima knew something was wrong. He grabbed his weapon and tightened his grip around it. And the way he reacted, you instantly knew that Arima knew Sasuke was lying. He knew that. So, let's talk about this next point that correlates what I'm about to mention. Sasuke leans up against the mirror and he says this: ever since the auction, chapter 31, the flashbacks have been more frequent. And occasionally, they'll be accompanied with a sharp pain gouging out the back of my eyes. Part 1 Tokyo Ghoul. Arima stabbed him in the fucking eyes. Holes in the head. Now, this can mean two things. Either Sasuke's remembering the pain of when he got stabbed by Arima. That's one thing. Or two, he's getting brainwashed or controlled. This goes back to the ant fungus. The fungus and the ants control the hosts and brainwash them. The fungus and the moths are pretty much similar to control the population and control them, brainwash them kind of. And from what you can get, what if the CCG, ever since the auction ended, they've been fucking with Kaneki's food, because we know for a fact he's been eating something. They've been fucking with his shit and trying to brainwash him or control him with some way. That could be what is going on. That could be a hint right there. That's a hint. Or it can be Kaneki's gonna break out of Sasuke. Those are the two different things, but I like the fungus theory. Though I really like that. It correlates really well with what is going on here. Since the auction he's been experiencing, I mean, at first glance it looks like it's because, you know, Kaneki's making more reappearing appearances, but it might be because of CCG's intervention, because they know something is going on with, you know, Sasuke wanting to keep a little girl around that's a ghoul, you know what I mean? And then, you know, Akira, the past with Akira and her, yeah. It's fucking obvious. So, enough of that. I think you guys either got fucking bored, you're probably upset. I don't even know if any of you are still watching this video, because I probably annoyed the fuck out of you talking about fungus and flowers and shit, dude. I have never fucking talked about fungus and flowers this damn long. My god, dude. Okay. You know what I mean? And now that I'm done, I think I'm done with the fungus. I've explained it pretty damn well. I've explained the fungus, I've explained the flowers with Shu, I've done my theories with whatever Kakuja Kagane or whatever Shu has. Next point to talk about, Juzo has a tarot card on his head. I'm not going to go completely in depth with that because there's just a lot of things to get from that. I haven't done my actual personal research of number 20. I think it's Judgment, by the way. I was told by Chibi. I haven't done my own personal research of that yet. I'll do that later this week, and I might make a separate video on it, on Juzo's new tarot card that's on his head. But for now, I'm just letting you know there is a tarot card on Juzo. It's number 20. It's his hairpins, or X's. 2 X's right into his hair. So, just let you know if you did not notice that. Also, everybody gets promoted. Everybody gets fucking promoted. Okay? Urei got his promotion. Fuck him. But he got promotion. I feel bad for him, shit. I do slightly feel bad for him after seeing the tarot card correlations with him. I do feel bad, but still, the thing is like, he finally got that promotion. Okay, let's move on. And then, there's some funny moments throughout the entire chapter with some setup, along with Hinami, you know, Akira getting pissed off, trying to force Sasuke to take the initiative to finish up his research and just stop his ownership of Hinami because time is running out. So, something bad is going to happen very soon. It's building up to that. A very good chapter. I think I've rambled on long enough. And, yeah, I'll probably make another video to clarify some more thoughts, depending on how you Chibit's reactions are after this video. So, please be safe. Chibi out.